Sports Talk with Craig Ballard, NBA Central Division preview. And if you're going to talk about the Central Division in the NBA, folks, of course you have to start with the Chicago Bulls, defending Central Division champions, and also were the number one seed in the entire Eastern Conference last season. Last season, of course, being new coach Tom Thibodeau's first season in the new Tom Thibodeau era, which promises to be a very, very good one. I'm excited about the Thibodeau era big time for the Chicago Bulls and for you Bulls fans out there. Thibodeau winning the Coach of the Year, of course, in his inaugural season at helm of the Bulls, and of course Derrick Rose at 22 years young winning the MVP season. As he's at 23 now and going forward, we know that the sky's the limit for this young man. Very, very evident from his rookie season to his second season that, and we even saw a guy like Kobe Bryant pointing this out as well, that he's very clearly taken what were his deficiencies in his rookie campaign, clearly put in the appropriate work and to improve those in the offseason from the first to the second season, and such a well-rounded game, or more rounded game in his second season. We will look for his maturing and his development to continue. Sky's the limit for this guy. I mean, wow, he's running your organization. You're in good hands. We know as well that it's a very formidable front court with Carlos Boozer and Joakim Noah. A very good front court there. Tom Thibodeau's squad very, very good at rebounding. Of course, starts with those two gentlemen there. A very good perimeter defense as well. Anytime Tom Thibodeau is your head coach, you're going to have an emphasis on defense, and he really has the ability to take teams and bring them to a championship level defensively. That's the big reason I'm so excited about Thibodeau and this Bulls team going forward. One thing that you have to really love in this offseason, they add Rip Hamilton. Rip coming over from a Central Division foe, the Detroit Pistons. And of course, we know Rip Hamilton is a scorer in the NBA, 17 points per game, a career average. Just 14 last year, and an 11-year veteran. He hadn't been as low as 14 since his rookie year, but we know a lot of Detroit Pistons last year struggled under then Pistons head coach John Huster. So we certainly don't think that Rip is a 14-point per game scorer. We think it's higher than that. I would even say, even if he just brings 14 points, he's such a dynamic addition to that two-guard spot to be a backcourt with Derrick Rose going forward. Significant upgrades. This is a Bulls team last year in the division, just romped 15-1 in the division for this Bulls team. I certainly anticipate to romp again going forward this year. Definitely will look for them to have heavy emphasis again as finishing as one of the top one or two seeds in the East to have home court advantage, because we know that they won't be taking last year's elimination from the playoffs as their window closing. We know that this Bulls team is just getting their run started, their bull run, no pun intended, getting started. I'm excited about this Bulls team. Last year, number one seed in the East. This year, this Miami team looks real damn good, but the Bulls are going to be heard from. They would be one of the top two teams in the East again this season. Next team we'll talk about in the Central Division, the only other team in the Central Division that I'm excited about, and that is the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers under head coach Frank Vogel. Now, this will be the first full training camp for Vogel, and he was really instrumental last year. Did a really nice job when he took over about 3/4 of the way through the season, helping to turn that Pacers team around and get them in the playoffs. That was the Pacers' first time in the playoffs in the last 5 years, so a nice job by Vogel. And right away, something I would identify as a Craig's key for this Pacers team is that Frank Vogel and that bench, they add Brian Shaw as an assistant coach to that coaching staff, to that bench. I really like that move. Shaw, of course, several years as on Phil Jackson's bench as an assistant in LA for many championship and just stacking a lot of wins. We know the Lakers have these last several years. So an organization that's only been to the playoffs once the last 5 years, to add somebody that comes from a winning culture like the Lakers, to add a Brian Shaw. I really like that move. As well, some off-season moves they made were really interesting as well. Of course, we know that on the existing roster, you have guys like Darren Collison. A lot will be needed from him in his second year with the Pacers. We know Danny Granger is a legitimate 20-point per game scorer. We know Paul George is a wonderful young player as well. A lot of upside for Paul George. And Roy Hibbert is a legitimate defensive anchor for that team as well going forward. Now you talk about the add George Hill. I like that move a lot. George Hill showed time and time again for the Spurs that he's clearly a very serviceable backup point guard. And I also like the addition of David West. David West, a legitimate 19 points a game, 10 rebounds per game, a potential player. To pair him down low with Roy Hibbert, that's now a nice front court. So definitely some things I like going on in Indiana. We'll take a look at them very closely this year. I'm excited about the Pacers this year. I think that they will be a repeat into the playoffs this year. Sports Talk with Craig Ballard, NBA Central Division preview. Next team we'll take a look at here, the Detroit Pistons. Out, of course, is John Custers. In is Lawrence Franks. Lawrence Franks, formerly of the New Jersey Nets, where he was a head coach. He was served on Doc Rivers' bench as well with the Celtics. Very good head coach here, in my estimation. Lawrence Franks, I think the Pistons did a nice job there. A rare nice move for for Joe Dumars, in my estimation. Anyway, I mean, Dumars, the architect of that 2004 NBA champions and the Piston team, and it seems like he bought himself such a leeway from that going forward, because the moves that he's made since then have been nothing short of disastrous, nothing short of terrible, yet there he is still gainfully employed there. They bring in Franks. On the roster, the way we have it now, you certainly look at a young man like Austin Day. Austin Day has improved each of his first 2 seasons, so certainly excited about him going forward. Brandon Knight is the young rookie, of course, that they add to run their points. So anytime that you're adding a rookie point guard, regardless of the upside, regardless of where his career is going to go, and we certainly believe that Brandon Knight is going to be a legitimate NBA point guard going forward. But any NBA point guard rookie year, there's going to be ups and downs, so we'll keep our eye there. Rodney Stuckey, of course, one of the key people that would be glad to see John Custer gone, so we'll look for improved play from Rodney Stuckey. Like Rodney Stuckey, he certainly has an upside as well, we know that. And the big thing, Craig's key here for this Pistons team, Jerebko Rowe will be back. Jonas Jerebko will return from health, and this is a guy that really has the Pistons fans excited, brings a lot of energy, brings a lot of different intangibles to the game. There's not a lot of like here on this Pistons roster. I was never a fan of bringing in Charlie V or Ben Gordon, in particular at the price tags that came with them. I just didn't think that they suited what the Pistons were trying to do at that time, and going forward, it still doesn't look to me like they suit that team. I'm not overly excited. As I mentioned before, I do like Lawrence Franks. I am a fan of what he can do and what he can bring to the table, to an organization. But overall, I'm not loving this Detroit Pistons team. Next team that we'll take a look at here, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Boy, I tell you, I have a lot of issues with this Cavs organization in general. Not a Dan Gilbert fan, their owner. Not a fan of his by any stretch of the imagination. And this last draft, I loved how they were set up going in with the number 1 and the number 4 overall picks. Boy, I thought that they made complete swings and misses with both those picks. That's, in my opinion, I could be proven to be wrong, of course. I didn't believe Kyrie Irving at all was the best player available in the draft this year. I didn't like taking him at number 1, and certainly at number 4. And I don't want to badmouth Tristan Thompson at all. Good Toronto boy, we good Canadian. We want to see him do well. We want to see him excel, of course. I just think, folks, that there was 0 NBA general managers that were looking to take Tristan Thompson in the 4 spot. I think a ton of opportunities would have been there for the Cavs to trade down, add another asset, maybe a second-round pick, or however they wanted to go about it, add another asset, and still be able to take Tristan Thompson later on in the draft. Of course, if you're a Raptor fan, the Cavs, if I'm right here, and they overstretched to get Thompson at number 4, then that allowed Jonas Valanciunas to fall right in your lap. So if you're a Raptor fan, you're like, hey, I'm good, no problem. Hey, do your thing, Cavs. Of course, we understand that. But from the Cavs standpoint, we'll certainly watch it going forward. As I've said before, I certainly could be wrong on this. I didn't like those 2 draft picks. They will certainly get a ton of opportunity in Cleveland to prove that they are legitimate and to prove that they are worthy of those lofty draft positions, no doubt about that. And we'll wish them well, of course. For me on this team, the one player that I'm going to list as a Craig's key is going to be Omri Caspi. Here's a guy, 3rd-year small forward. I think that he'll have a chance to return to health, and that he'll have a chance to establish that he can be a relevant piece going forward in the NBA. I've just always kind of, in the small spurts we've seen him, I've just always kind of liked his game. I think that he has upside, and I'll be watching him closely myself. Offensively, of course, this is a team that has nothing but areas to address offensively. One of the worst offensive teams in the NBA. Only the Milwaukee Bucks shot worse than the Cavs last year. The Cavs in the bottom 3rd, in fact, of all offensive categories. So, of course, a lot of room for improvement for the Cavs. We'll be watching this young team going forward. I'm not overly optimistic here, folks. Now, folks, that brings us in the Central Division preview to the last, and if you're talking about offensively, at least from last season, we're talking about the least, not just in the division, in the National Basketball Association, the Milwaukee Bucks. This was a team that was just dreadful, an absolute nightmare offensively last season. In is Mike Dunleavy Jr., in is Steven Jackson, also Tobias Harris, who was Mr. New York Basketball in 2010, is in as a rookie as well. So some interesting things going forward as the Bucks, of course, looking to address the offense. course, the big things on this team, the two Craig Skis that we'll talk about, and they're the obvious ones. We need Andrew Bogut. If you're a Bucks fan, if you want to fear the Bucks again, then you need Andrew Bogut to reestablish himself as a premier center going forward and a scorer, somebody who's going to really help with the offense on a consistent basis, healthy. And of course, you're going to need the other Craig Ski that we're going to look at, absolutely, Brendan Jennings. Has to step his game up. I know a lot of people out there, I'm hearing it all the time, folks, are ready to turn the page on Brendan Jennings, and B, a lot of you out there have already turned the page on Brendan Jennings, not believing that this guy is a legitimate NBA point guard going forward. I am not in either one of those camps. I absolutely believe that Brendan Jennings can be a dynamic player in the National Basketball Association, a legitimate starting point guard in the NBA. I think he can have his scoring north of 20, to be totally honest with you. I think he's that kind of point guard. I think that he's the main thing, the main cog that has to get this Bucks offense rolling, and we'll certainly watch that very closely this season. That was Sports Talk with Craig Ballard, NBA Central Division Preview. Check out the other division previews on the YouTube channel as well.